The morning sky above Denver turned crimson as massive alien vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere, like falling stars dipped in blood. Captain Jackson Rivers pressed his face against the reinforced glass of the military command center, watching humanity's worst nightmare unfold in real time. The ships were magnificent and terrifying, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. "Sir, we're getting reports from every major city," Lieutenant Zara Novak called from her communications station, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow, they're all under attack simultaneously." Jackson turned from the window, his weathered face grim but determined. At 42, he had seen combat in 3 different theaters, but nothing had prepared him for this. The aliens had announced their presence with a simple message broadcast across every frequency on Earth. "Surrender your world. Resistance is futile. Your species will serve the Kethmori Empire." The response from humanity had been equally simple. "Come and take it." High above Earth's surface, Commander Vexthul of the Kethmori surveyed the blue-green world through the vast viewing portal of his flagship. His species had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, each falling within days of their arrival. The pattern was always the same: initial shock, brief resistance, then complete capitulation as the inferior species realized the futility of opposing Kethmori technology. "Begin the pacification protocols," Vexthul commanded, his forearms moving gracefully across the command console. His species stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between deep purple and black depending on their emotional state. "Target military installations first. Leave civilian populations intact for processing." The first wave of Kethmori attack craft swept down from the motherships like angry wasps. Their plasma cannons carved through the sky, leaving trails of superheated air in their wake. Military bases across the globe erupted in flames as the alien weapons found their marks with devastating precision. But the humans were not standing still. "All units, this is Rivers," Jackson spoke into his headset as he strapped himself into the cockpit of his F-35 Lightning. Around him, the surviving aircraft of the 460th Fighter Squadron were powering up their engines. "Remember your training. These things can fly, but they still follow the laws of physics. Use that against them." Pilot Thane Blackwood's voice crackled through the radio from his own fighter. "Copy that, Captain. My sensors are picking up some interesting readings from their exhaust signatures. These ships might be fast, but they're not as maneuverable as they look." The first aerial engagement took place over the Colorado Rockies as human fighters rose to meet the descending alien craft. The Kethmori pilots, confident in their technological superiority, flew in tight formations that would have been perfect for overwhelming primitive aircraft. They had not anticipated the creativity of human tactics. "Break formation on my mark," Jackson commanded, as the 2 forces approached each other at supersonic speeds. "Scatter pattern 7, use the canyons." What followed was unlike any aerial combat in galactic history. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on in a traditional dogfight, the human pilots dove toward the mountainous terrain, using the rocky canyons and valleys as cover. The alien ships, designed for space combat and atmospheric superiority, found themselves struggling to maintain formation in the tight confines of Earth's geography. Lieutenant Zara Novak, monitoring the battle from the command center, watched the tactical display with growing excitement. "The alien ships are having trouble with rapid altitude changes," she reported. "Their weapon systems seem to have a lag time when transitioning between targets at different elevations." Back in the canyon, Jackson used this information to deadly effect. He led his squadron through a series of aerial maneuvers that took advantage of Earth's terrain in ways the Kethmori had never encountered. The human fighters would disappear behind rock formations, emerge at unexpected angles, and deliver precision strikes before vanishing again into the landscape. "What sorcery is this?" Vexthul demanded as reports of losses began streaming in from his attack squadrons. "These primitives should not possess such tactical awareness." His subordinate, war leader, Sektar, studied the incoming data with growing concern. "Commander, their aircraft are inferior to ours in every technical specification, yet they are achieving favorable engagement ratios. They seemed to be using their planet's surface features as weapons. Meanwhile, on the ground, engineer Rosa Delacroix was making discoveries that would change the course of the war. Working frantically in an underground bunker beneath the ruins of NORAD, she analyzed the electromagnetic signatures of the alien weapons. Her dark eyes blazed with scientific excitement as patterns emerged on her screens. Their plasma cannons operate on a cyclical frequency, she announced to the other scientists huddled around her workstation. There's a 2-second interval between each shot where the weapon needs to recharge. And look at this, their shields pulse in a predictable pattern every 37 seconds. This information was immediately relayed to the fighting forces above. Human soldiers began timing their movements to exploit these brief vulnerabilities, darting from cover during the weapon's recharge cycles and concentrating their fire during the shield fluctuations. The Keth Mori ground forces, equipped with energy weapons and powered armor that could withstand most conventional attacks, found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Human soldiers used improvised explosive devices, collapsing buildings to create choke points, and even turned civilian vehicles into mobile weapons platforms. In the streets of Chicago, a group of construction workers led by foreman Miguel Santos turned their equipment into instruments of war. Bulldozers reinforced with steel plating charged alien formations, while excavators used their massive arms to literally grab enemy soldiers and throw them into buildings. The Keth Mori, trained for formal military engagements, had no protocols for fighting heavy machinery operated by determined civilians. These humans adapt too quickly, Sektar reported to Vexathul as casualty reports continued to mount. Every tactic we employ they counter within hours. They modify their equipment, change their strategies, and coordinate across vast distances without any apparent central command structure. Vexthul's skin darkened to pure black, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Impossible. No species develops tactical flexibility this rapidly. They must have some form of advanced communication network we have not detected. But there was no hidden network. There was only humanity doing what it had always done best: adapt, improvise, and overcome. Word of successful tactics spread through social media, ham radio, and even simple word of mouth. A technique that worked in New York was being implemented in Los Angeles within hours. Equipment modifications discovered in Berlin were being replicated in São Paulo by evening. As the first day of invasion drew to a close, the Keth Mori forces found themselves in an unprecedented situation. They had achieved their initial objectives. Major military installations lay in ruins and their ships controlled the skies above Earth's major cities. But the humans had not surrendered. Instead, they had vanished into their cities, their forests, their mountains, and their underground tunnels, taking their weapons and their determination with them. Captain Jackson Rivers stood in the ruins of what had once been Peterson Air Force Base, his flight suit torn and his face streaked with soot. Around him, the surviving members of his squadron were already planning their next move. They had lost over half their aircraft in the day's fighting, but they had also proven something important. The aliens could be hurt. Lieutenant Novak, he called to Zara, who was setting up a portable communications array among the rubble. "What's our status on that underground facility?" "Operational within the hour, sir," she replied. "Rosa's people are already working on modifications to our remaining equipment based on today's observations. And sir, we're getting reports from resistance cells worldwide. Everyone wants to know how we took down those alien fighters." Jackson smiled grimly as he looked up at the alien ships hovering overhead like mechanical vultures. The Keth Mori probably thought they had won the first day. They had no idea that for humanity, the first day was just the beginning. In the command ship, above, Bexthal stared at the tactical displays showing the positions of his forces across the planet. By all conventional measures, the invasion was proceeding successfully. Yet something felt wrong. The humans had retreated, but they had not broken. Their resistance had been too organized, too creative, too adaptable. "War Leader Sektar," he commanded, "implement Phase 2 pacification protocols. Begin targeted strikes on civilian population centers. Fear will accomplish what force has not." Sektar hesitated for a moment. his skin shifting to a lighter shade of purple. "Commander, intelligence suggests the humans may respond to civilian casualties by intensifying their resistance rather than surrendering." "Nonsense," Vexthal replied, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "All species value the survival of their non-combatants above continued resistance. These humans will be no different." But as the night fell over Earth and the alien ships prepared for their next phase of attack, Vexthal could not shake the feeling that he had gravely miscalculated. The humans were not behaving like any species the Kethmori had previously encountered. They were not following the rules of conquest that had served the Empire across 47 worlds. Down in the underground command center, Jackson Rivers was having a similar realization from the opposite perspective. Humanity was facing an enemy with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and centuries of military experience. By every rational calculation, Earth should surrender within days. But rationality had never been humanity's strongest suit. As reports came in from around the globe, of farmers turning their equipment into weapons, of urban guerrillas using subway systems as tactical advantages, of scientists working around the clock to unlock the secrets of alien technology, Jackson began to understand something the Kethmori did not. They had not invaded a world. They had walked into a trap 47 worlds in the making, carefully baited with the appearance of primitive weakness. And now, for the first time in their imperial history, the Kethmori were about to learn what happened when humanity said no. The first day of the invasion was over. The real war was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the Crimson Fleet first darkened Earth's skies, and the world above ground belonged to the Kethmori Empire. Their towering command spires pierced the skylines of major cities. Their patrols swept through empty streets, and their propaganda broadcasts promised order and prosperity for those who submitted to imperial rule. But beneath the surface, in tunnels and bunkers and forgotten places, humanity was writing a different story. Commander Jackson Rivers, now bearing the scars of a dozen underground battles, stood before a holographic map that flickered in the dim light of the Resistance Command Center. The facility, carved from natural caves beneath the Rocky Mountains, hummed with activity as hundreds of volunteers worked around the clock. What had begun as a desperate military retreat had evolved into something the Kethmori had never encountered before, a shadow civilization dedicated entirely to their destruction. "Status report, Captain Novak," Jackson said, turning to the woman who had become his most trusted advisor. Zara had proven herself invaluable, not just for her communications expertise, but for her ability to coordinate resistance cells across the globe, using everything from ham radio to carrier pigeons. "The network is stronger than ever," Zara replied, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards as data streams flowed around her. "We have active cells in every major city, and our rural operations have basically turned the countryside into a no-go zone for Kethmori patrols. But the real breakthrough is coming from Dr. Vasquez's lab." Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her workstation, where alien technology lay in various states of disassembly. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray from months of 18-hour days, but her eyes blazed with the fire of discovery. "We've cracked their power core design," she announced, holding up a device that pulsed with an eerie blue light. "Not only can we replicate their energy weapons, but we've found a way to make them more efficient than the originals." The transformation of human technology had been nothing short of miraculous. Using salvaged alien components and reverse-engineered designs, humanity had leapfrogged centuries of development in mere months. Plasma rifles powered by hybrid human Kethmori energy cells were now standard equipment for resistance fighters. Personal force fields, originally clunky alien designs, had been streamlined by human engineers into lightweight protective gear. But it was the innovations that went beyond simple copying that truly worried the Kethmori command. Humans had taken alien technology and improved it in ways the original designers never imagined. They had added redundant systems, modular components, and fail-safes that made their equipment more reliable than the Imperial standard. Most disturbing of all, they had added unpredictability to previously logical designs. General Marcus Stone, the grizzled veteran who coordinated military operations across North America, studied intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. Their patrols are changing routes 3 times a day, he noted. Classic sign of an occupying force losing confidence. How's our infiltration program coming along? The answer came from Cale Winters, a man who barely looked old enough to shave, but had somehow managed to penetrate deeper into Kethmori command structure than anyone thought possible. I've been working as a maintenance technician in their Denver command spire for 6 weeks, he reported, via encrypted transmission. They don't really see individual humans as threats anymore. We all look alike to them, apparently. I've been documenting their security protocols, communication frequencies, and shift changes. What Cale had discovered was a fundamental weakness in the Kethmori occupation strategy. The aliens, accustomed to ruling through fear and technological superiority, had never developed effective counterintelligence techniques. Their society was so rigidly hierarchical that the concept of deception from below was almost incomprehensible to them. A human janitor could walk through their most secure facilities virtually invisible, as long as he followed the proper protocols and appeared sufficiently subservient. This oversight was costing them dearly. Human infiltrators had penetrated dozens of Kethmori installations, mapping layouts, identifying key personnel, and even planting listening devices in command centers. The Resistance knew the aliens' battle plans often before their own field commanders did. But the most significant development was happening in the mind of war leader Sektar, second in command of the occupation force. Standing in the observation deck of the main command spire, he watched human work crews clearing rubble from the latest Resistance bombing. 3 months of fighting had taught him uncomfortable truths about the species his empire was trying to conquer. They are not breaking, he said to his aide, a younger Kethmori officer whose skin still shifted to bright colors with enthusiasm. Every action we take against them results in increased resistance, not decreased. Yesterday's bombing of the supply convoy has led to 17 separate attacks on our installations in the past 24 hours. The aide's skin flickered nervously between purple and green. War leader, perhaps Commander Vex Thul's strategy of escalating force will eventually succeed. No species can maintain resistance indefinitely. Sektar's skin darkened to a deep, thoughtful blue. That is what we believed about the other 47 worlds, yes. But those species eventually recognize the futility of resistance. These humans seem to grow stronger with each defeat. It is unprecedented. Unknown to Sektar, his conversations were being monitored by human intelligence. Cale Winters had managed to plant listening devices throughout the command spire, and every word was being transmitted to the Resistance leadership. The growing doubt in the Kethmori command structure was valuable intelligence, but it also revealed something troubling. The aliens were preparing for a final, decisive escalation. They're planning something big, Zara reported during the daily briefing. Communications traffic has increased by 300% over the past week, and they're moving heavy equipment into position around major population centers. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her latest project, a human-designed improvement on Kethmori shield technology. If they're following standard Kethmori doctrine, they'll attempt to break resistance morale by demonstrating overwhelming force against civilian targets. It's what they did on Kepler 442b according to the data we've extracted from captured equipment. Jackson felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground facility's temperature. How many civilians are we talking about? If they follow their usual pattern, Elena continued grimly, they'll target the largest population center they can attack with minimal military risk. New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago would be their most likely choices. But the Kethmori had made a critical error in their intelligence assessment. They believed they were facing a traditional resistance movement that could be broken by attacking civilian populations. What they failed to understand was that the distinction between civilian and combatant had become meaningless in the human resistance. Every factory worker was a potential saboteur, every office building could hide a command center, and every civilian was a potential intelligence asset. The plan that emerged from the human command structure was audacious even by their standards, Instead of trying to prevent the Kethmori attack, they would use it as an opportunity to strike at the heart of the alien command structure. While the bulk of the Kethmori fleet was engaged in their demonstration of force, human infiltrators would seize control of the command spires in every major city simultaneously. It's completely insane, General Stone admitted as he reviewed the operational plans. We're talking about coordinating attacks across 6 continents with split-second timing, using equipment we've been building in caves and basement workshops. Insane enough that they'll never see it coming, Jackson replied. They're expecting us to cower in our tunnels while they destroy a city. Instead, we're going to take their command centers while they're distracted. The operation, codenamed Prometheus, Rising, required months of preparation and coordination that pushed human organizational capabilities to their limits. Resistance cells that had been operating independently suddenly found themselves part of a global network more complex than anything in human history. Weapons and equipment were smuggled through underground networks that spanned continents. Infiltrators who had spent months establishing their covers prepared for missions that would either liberate Earth or result in their certain death. As the day of the operation approached, Commander Vexthul stood in his flagship's command center, reviewing the final preparations for what he intended to be the decisive blow against human resistance. The target was Chicago, 2 million humans, whose destruction would surely break the spirit of the remaining resistance cells. All attack squadrons report ready, his tactical officer announced. Plasma bombardment will commence in 6 hours. Vexthul's skin displayed the deep satisfaction of anticipated victory. Excellent. Once the humans witness the price of continued resistance, we will finally have the compliant workforce this world was meant to provide. But 6 hours later, as the first plasma bombardments began raining down on the evacuated ruins of Chicago, the humans had somehow managed to evacuate the entire population in the days leading up to the attack. Alarms began screaming throughout every Kethmori installation on Earth. In Denver, Cale Winters and his team emerged from maintenance shafts throughout the command spire, armed with hybrid human Kethmori weapons and intimate knowledge of the facility's layout. In London, a resistance cell that had been disguised as a cleaning service for 3 months simultaneously seized control of communication arrays and weapon systems. In Tokyo, São Paulo, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities, the pattern was repeated as humans appeared seemingly from nowhere to take control of alien installations. The coordination was perfect, the timing flawless, and the results catastrophic for the Kethmori Empire. Within 2 hours, humanity controlled every major alien installation on Earth, except for the orbital fleet. More importantly, they had captured the planet's entire alien communication network, giving them access to Kethmori military frequencies, databases, and command protocols. War leader Sektar, trapped in his own command center by human forces, found himself face-to-face with Commander Jackson Rivers for the first time. The human looked smaller than Sektar had expected, scarred and tired from months of underground warfare, but his eyes held a determination that the Kethmori officer had never encountered before. "Your bombardment failed," Jackson said simply. "Your installations are captured. Your ground forces are cut off from command and control. I believe it's time to discuss terms." Sektar's skin shifted through a rapid series of colors: confusion, anger, disbelief, and finally a grudging respect. "How?" he asked. "Your species was classified as technologically primitive, socially fragmented, and militarily ineffective. Our intelligence indicated you would collapse within days of initial contact." Jackson smiled grimly. "Your intelligence was wrong. We're not fragmented. We're diverse. We're not primitive. We're adaptable. And we're not militarily ineffective. We just don't fight the way you expected. You conquered 47 worlds using the same playbook. We wrote a new one." In the orbital fleet above, Commander Vexthul faced the impossible reality that his invasion had not just failed, but had been completely reversed. The humans were using captured Kethmori equipment to demand his surrender, threatening to turn the Empire's own weapons against his ships. Worse, they had somehow managed to contact other species across the galaxy, spreading word of Kethmori, defeat and encouraging rebellion on previously conquered worlds. "This is unprecedented," he whispered to his remaining officers. No species has ever recovered from initial occupation. No species has ever turned our own technology against us so effectively. No species has ever been human. Sektar's voice came through the communication system, now controlled by the Resistance. Commander, I recommend immediate withdrawal. These beings are not like anything we have encountered before. They do not simply resist conquest. They transform it into opportunity. The evacuation of the Keth Mori fleet from Earth took 3 days. As the Crimson ships disappeared into the depths of space, humanity emerged from its underground strongholds to reclaim the surface world. But they were not the same species that had first looked up at alien vessels 6 months earlier. They had been forged by adversity into something new, something stronger, something that other species across the galaxy would soon learn to call upon when their own worlds faced the threat of conquest. Standing in the ruins of Denver, watching the last alien ship vanish into the stars, Jackson Rivers reflected on the transformation of his species. Humanity had not just survived first contact with a hostile alien civilization, they had evolved beyond recognition in the process. They had learned to combine their greatest strengths with alien technology, creating something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Think they'll be back? Zara asked, joining him on the observation deck of what had once been a Keth Mori command spire. Jackson considered the question seriously. Maybe, but if they do come back, they'll find we've had time to prepare. And next time, we won't be fighting just for Earth. Above them, the stars beckoned with infinite possibilities. Humanity had passed its first test as a spacefaring civilization, not through peaceful exploration, but through the crucible of interstellar war. They had proven that they could not only survive contact with hostile alien life, but could adapt, overcome, and emerge stronger than before. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Keth Mori Empire had intended to add Earth to their collection of conquered worlds. Instead, they had awakened something that would challenge the very foundations of galactic civilization. Humanity had refused to kneel, and in doing so had stood up not just for themselves but for every species that had ever dreamed of freedom among the stars. The war for Earth was over. The war for the galaxy was just beginning.